Kathy Johnson, and welcome to Town Talk. Today, as you can see, I have a number of people that are joining me here on stage, and we're going to have an old-fashioned round table, kitchen table discussion on some of the, we're going to talk about law enforcement, and I have some wonderful people here with me, and I'm going to start at my left. I'm going to ask each one of you to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Chris Rosario, State Representative of the 128th District in Bridgeport, and I'm also part of the Civilian Administration for the Shelton Police Department. And Kathy, I want to thank you for having me on the show. I know I've been a guest on Street Talk with Father Russ and Dominic, and I look forward to having a great conversation with you all today.
Well, it's a privilege and an honor to have you here, a fellow politician. I'm holding office myself, small time, and we'll go to Officer.
Yep, my name is Officer David Eldridge, and I work at the Shelton Police Department, and I'm currently the Crime Prevention Officer there. And I work patrol as well.
Well, welcome.
Thank you so much.
And to my left here?
I'm Chief Shawn Sequeira with the Shelton Police Department, where I've been there for the last year. Prior to coming here, I've spent most of my career in major crimes within the Connecticut State Police Department, and I'm happy to be here to participate in the conversation.
And I'm very pleased to have you. It's truly an honor to you folks to want to do a show. Thank you. And to my right?
Father Russ Carmichael, host of Street Talk and advocate for disabilities.
I'm just Dominic. I'm just here.
Just Dominic.
Just Dominic, right? Biggest trouble maker in the state.
We're the three musketeers here, and he's the brains of the outfit. All right? So, anyway. Well, this is going to be a wonderful show. I'd like to start with you, Chief.
Sure.
Telling us a little something about Shelton. You're a police chief in Shelton, and anything that might be on your mind that you would like to open the discussion with.
Just to give you an overview, my job as the Shelton Police Chief is to make sure that safety is our top concern within the community. I look at it, as we were speaking previous to even the show starting, I look at everything in its entirety in the setting and bringing everyone together to work together within the community, whether it's the civilian population in the community working directly with the police department, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club, whether it's the daycares, the local businesses, small businesses and the major business we have in the city, whether we have in concerts at the Riverwalk and the Green, and just the safety is my major concern in decreasing risk reduction within fatalities, the opioid crisis, and as well as just improving our quality of life in general.
Well, we'll get into some of those things, and I'll ask you, Officer. Let's see, Eldridge.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry. I
That's
have to
fine. That's
refer to my notes.
That's quite all right.
Officer Eldridge. Now. You were talking a little earlier about relationship with the public, and given a little overview of what is on your mind at this point.
Well, I always had the belief that we get our best bang for our buck when we go out and we introduce ourselves to the public, and take that extra step that when you're out of the car, you're in a public place, to make that small talk with people, greet them. Find out their names. Find out how's things going in their lives, and I think that's part of some of the bond that has been missing in law enforcement. Yeah. And I think it's over the last few years, it's the trend. It's coming back. I see the younger guys doing it more often, and the older officers doing it as well. And we're making more of a concert effort to employ that.
Well, I see lately a feeling in some that that law enforcement is the enemy, or they're not happy or whatever. Now, I'm just throwing things that I see. Right. Please excuse my ignorance, and jump in anytime. I mean, have you?
If I could say one thing on that, is that in today's society, good news doesn't sell. So for every bad thing that we see on TV, I could give you 50 different examples almost every night that I see of good things happening. From other citizens helping other citizens, from officers pulling over and helping somebody change a tire. It goes on and on, but that does not sell. Mm-hmm. So what sells is something burning, somebody fighting, somebody. that sells.
Sure,
So while
sure.
while we talk that us against them, for every negative that's out there, I would bet that there's hundreds of positives out there, and I'm a firm believer. I just see too much good in society, and I realize that there's bad, but there's a lot of good out there, a lot of good. Just
Right.
this forum right here, what we're doing.
Right,
Is great.
one of the scariest things, which even the chief mentioned a little, the opioid problem is
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
obviously the whole country is concerned about that. I mean, a state like New Hampshire, number one. I mean, who can believe? You know what I mean? They expect it in our Roxbury or down in Bridgeport. No, nobody ever expected it in New Hampshire and small towns. You got to be, as you mentioned, you got to be dealing with this, and that has to be an integrated community thing, I would think, right?
And it is. It is. Just 2 weeks ago, we had that forum with Senator Murphy.
Yes, Senator Chris Murphy.
Yep,
Yes.
and it was given in all sorts of professionals. The BHC, a local organization that helps for substance abuse, they were present, plus doctors from Yale, from all over, all aspects. But they were coming up with the real solutions of the opiate epidemic right now. New laws of what to put in place and what we could do about it, because it's not just about law enforcement making the arrest,
Right.
because you could make the arrest, but because the heroin is so strong, or the opioids are so strong physically and psychologically, just making the arrest and somebody making bond or going for a 2-3 day treatment does not work.
No.
You need prevention first, and I think
Yeah.
that's what came about most in that meeting, was the prevention side. Because if you could prevent through education and through parents learning to diagnose the problem, to realize the problem first, then you could get that treatment first. But once the die's been cast, it's a different animal to approach. But through that meeting, there's also new laws within the state of Connecticut on how much a person could be prescribed by a doctor.
Right, right.
And Chris, you've got a unique position between being a legislator now and you work with these guys. Right?
Well, you know,
yeah, right.
I've been with the Shelton Police Department for a little over 6 months now, and I've always had a high appreciation for our men and women in uniform. But it's really gone up that much higher, seeing what they do on a day-to-day basis, and it starts at the top with the chief. And when I know you had mentioned community policing, he really has been really pushing that within the department. As you can see, we got Officer Eldridge, who's been out in the community, really doing a great job. But touching back on the whole opiate situation, we did pass legislation this past session to limit prescriptions to 7 days, unless you're a chronic needer of the medicine. However, but even then, we still have a lot of work to do.
Yes, you know, Chris, yes, you do, because from a legislative point of view, this is where it all starts. This is the base of it. Mental health, the drug problems, and those who are less fortunate, a place that they can go. If you have insurance and all, if you come off the street into an emergency room and you don't have insurance or any place to go, they'll fix you up and throw you back out. These are things that are big problems.
It doesn't matter what socioeconomic part of the state you live in. You could be in Bridgeport, or you could be in Oxford, you could be in Shelton.
Anywhere.
It's affecting families all
is.
over the
It
state.
is.
And one of the things that Pam Motti from BH Care has been stressing, and I know there's a video coming out there, they're showing something, I believe it's in Ansonia, called Generation Found. It's a documentary on children who have been, addicted to opiates. And I know Officer Eldridge has been really talking to our Board of Education, to our sports athletes, how they can easily get addicted to Vicodin, Percocets, and those drugs can easily fall into their hands.
I think it's important the viewers realize or know that for an opiate, you could be addicted to it after 3 times using on a Percocet.
Sure.
So just imagine you could have a legitimate reason, motor vehicle accident, or your child was involved in a sports injury, and goes and gets a prescription, and after taking it a few days, they might not be, it's not calling them an all-out addict, but what happens is your body does become dependent on it. So when you do stop that prescription, you do go through somewhat of withdrawal. So what happened was, over the years, as these doctors, not to villainize the doctors, but as the doctors would prescribe, and the parents would give the prescription to their kids, or at some point the child would take the prescription himself. Did you take your Percocet? Where we're trying to emphasize now, we're trying to get rid of the normalization of, hey, did you take your medicine, versus you're not taking that medicine today. You already had one, you're not getting no more, and you're only going to get it for 3 days, and no, we're not giving it to you for the full week. Here's an aspirin. So we're trying to break that cycle there of the normalcy. You have to remember, when we were younger, we're going to date ourselves, when we thought of heroin addicts, we thought of somebody with a needle and a gutter. That's not the case.
That's exactly right.
It has been remarketed with the onset of OxyContin and the overprescription of Percocets and Valium. It's been remarketed to where we could crush the pill up, do just a small match head, just a little match head, because how's that match head gonna hurt you? You don't have the visual. When I was young, it's, oh, I don't want to be a junkie. Look at what they look like. Oh, but no, it's remarketed as more of a chic. Yeah.
Well, having a medical background myself, and been retired, I'll tell you that doctors have a tendency not to explain what they're giving you. Sometimes you don't want to vilify them, and I don't either, because believe me, we need doctors, and thank God they want to go into that profession. But you walk away not realizing that they've given you something for pain, and if your mind has never heard of oxycodone or even know what that means, now you're, if you have an addictive personality, now you're down that road. You know, we've had it in our family, and I know of a person now that is being treated as an outpatient and waiting for a bed in an institution. How do you do that to a person? When you're that bad off, you can't wait for a bed, you know?
And it's a trickle-down effect, because they're going to do whatever they can to get that next high. Whether it's, and then it falls on our officers' laps, because they're gonna go out and commit a crime.
Well, you're talking about prevention, and I'm sure you probably have this within Shelton. One of the major things that parents can do is make sure that they take all those unused medications and drop them off, because people come in, even like on realtors will tell you, check your medicine cabinet, because people will come in and they'll go shopping through your medicine cabinet.
Yeah, it's
So
that
if you,
desperate, yes.
and some people keep them around because they think that, oh, I might need this at a later day.
Well, we were talking about the elderly. I mean, the police
Yeah.
department reach out to the elderly. Yeah, you know, kids go over to grandma's house and grandpa's house. Guess what's in there?
Right.
Okay, and the next thing it's out of. Because I love what the police's the chief's concept of policing, because I've got a friend who studies all that stuff. But when you're dealing, when you deal with a holistic type of method, and you're dealing with the elderly, you can talk Oxycontins and what they might not know, that, you know, your grandchildren are coming in your house and visiting the bathroom. Right.
This epidemic affects the entire community.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly,
with just making awareness is a big thing in educating. You're in the school system, talking to the juveniles, talking to the parents right from the start, speaking with the elderly, tell them to lock up your medication, you know, be responsible, because these addicts, they'll break into your home to get it. Plenty of burglaries every day, and as a police department, we look at every preventative measure we can, as well as most police departments now, we're looking into the Narcan and training our officers to be equipped, and as we distribute it with them. But a lot of it affects, just like I said, good old community policing. And when they say with community policing, everyone says, what is community policing? And the stereotype of community police is, and people just think it's programs that you're working with that builds the interaction with the community. It's the school resource officers and the programs you offer. What's the police department doing as programs? I look at it as it's just your day-to-day interaction between the officer and the community.
Yeah, exactly.
It's your day-to-day interaction. How are you dealing with that individual? I mean, we've come a long way from police officers pulling over. You're speeding on my highway. you're just traveling
Right.
too fast. Here's your ticket. There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's just how you interact, because most of these people, and it affects all of us, and we all have them, and it touches us personally as well as in the prison systems and outward. We have maybe, I think it's like 21,000 people incarcerated in the state of Connecticut, whatever the 1,000 number is.
Right.
And a large percentage of these people are getting prescribed medication.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
And
sure.
they're forced to take it within the prison system.
Yeah.
And then these people are sentenced 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or whatever it is, they come back out into the community.
Just like
And
that,
they have
you're
they're
supposed to
suffering
be
different
okay.
right,
Yeah.
and they suffer with different diagnoses. The only difference is there's not people that's on them to take the medication, and some of them prescribe medication that they can't take. And these are the people that we are countering in the police department ourselves. And you have to be trained and you have to be equipped in dealing with them. They might be having a bad day. They might have an argument with their spouse. They might be schizophrenic. They might be bipolar.
Yeah.
They might be, and when you're dealing with these people, it's just your day-to-day interaction with that officer and dealing with. If he didn't look you in your eyes, maybe there's nothing wrong with him. Maybe he is just suffering from a diagnosis. You try to understand.
Or
Yeah.
they might be brain injured.
They might
and
be brain
certainly-
injured.
Same
And
thing.
you got to know how to
knowing,
deal
like,
with people with mental
what,
health issues.
what people's issues are. And
Right.
I know we have people that, they walk differently, they talk differently,
And
they
they're
might appear like
assumed
they're
that-
on drugs
And
or
that's
other
risk
things.
reduction. And a lot
Yeah.
of officers sometimes, if they're not getting the response that they feel, they think that they're being provoked or it's being instigated.
a word
And you got to try to understand.
Yeah, a word comes to my mind that a little empathy. I don't think people really understand that sometimes their mental suffering and abuse
Right.
suffering is just as painful as cutting yourself or
Yes.
a heart attack. These people are in great pain. They can't help themselves. I know that a lot of judgment sometimes is placed on them. I mean, at least that's how I've seen it through some of my experiences. And coming across as the feeling like, I'm thinking of myself, Chief. I'm in agony, and there's a police officer. I'm going to run to him because I feel like I can and say, help me.
Right.
Or I'm not going near him because I know he's not going to understand, and maybe I'll get hurt. Maybe they don't know.
Right.
All these things go through their mind.
And we have to realize that your day-to-day interaction, every interaction with the police department, doesn't have to be negative. It can be positive. And I'm bringing it right to motor vehicle stops and enforcement. Enforcement, we know,
Yes.
is necessary.
Yeah,
There's a
right.
direct correlation with enforcement that it decreases traffic accidents, it decreases crime by enforcement. You don't always, as an officer, have to give out a speeding ticket. You can leave it as a positive interaction. But at the same time, too, as a public, and as well as I would, my kids are small, they're 7 and 3, but as well we teach our kids, you don't want to provoke the police department. You want to comply with the police department. If you want to make a report, there's a process to do it the next day. And there's a matter because you're going to get nowhere by instigating. And I know it's a big thing now with what do you call it? The
Facebook,
Facebooks, the
Live, yeah.
cameras,
Yeah.
and they're tape recording and this and that.
Right,
and I
right.
understand why they're doing it. And like I said, and not everyone is instigating police officers. A small percentage, but we
Right.
hear about that small percentage
I
because
have
that's what
watched it
sells.
because I was at a
That's what
protest
sells.
down in Fairfield, and I did, and I have to give Fairfield Police Department great credit. I mean, we were protesting, obviously, Donald Trump coming to town, and they were great. You know what? They made sure that everybody was safe. They didn't pick sides on anything. But I know, like, somebody from our side was like sort of like almost in the officer's face. And he handled it like really professionally. We
Give
tried
me
to
a
tell him,
psychologist.
come on back
Right.
here and everything else.
Right.
But the issue I guess I look at it from is, you know what? We're all human beings, and police officers are human beings too.
Yeah.
And I think people sometimes they just look at the badge, and they don't look at the face of the person that's there and realize that they're
You're
dealing
right.
with a lot
don't-
of stuff.
But
too.
don't get me wrong. Police officers are held to a higher standard.
Oh yes, they
Because
are.
that is their job.
They are.
Exactly.
Because
right.
that is their job. So,
Right.
so,
That's right. Yeah.
and now we came a long way. Police officer, you can be a counselor. You go to a domestic violence, response to a domestic violence home. You can be a counselor. You can be a drug counselor. You can be a marriage counselor. You can be all these things, but we don't have all day to do it.
Right.
We have time restraints.
Right.
So there's certain things that we have to get in order. And one of the main things as police officers, we like to identify who we're dealing with. But the public needs to know this is not always, doesn't have to be a negative encounter.
But the citizen has to follow your direction too.
That's it.
If you tell them, put your hands where I can see them, if you do that, they also have to cooperate too. And then it must be extremely, I don't want to say the word fear, but it's got to be unnerving when you've asked for someone to comply and you realize that they're not going to comply, and what are you going to do next that's going to be best for them, for everyone, and you come out all right? That's a difficult.
I was just excited. I didn't mean to cut you off either. Over the years, we've asked the police to be everything to everybody. Okay, I really believe that. It's not like when I grew up and stuff like that. You have to be all things to all people. Nobody ever liked enforcement, and somehow over the years we built a wall that now it needs to in the community, like them. You became them. You were called all kinds of vicious names, and then we got the paramilitary type of stuff because of enforcement and stuff like that. And hopefully, we're in a position now across the country where we're trying to change that to all the police departments, and that's got to be the biggest job for you guys.
And I think that was what Officer Eldridge was, and what you were saying about this.
To build this bond, to remove that us against them. I'll give you a quick example. I had pulled somebody over about a week ago. And right when I pulled them over, I already prepared myself for if someone's going to be hostile at the winter and not, try to be.
Yeah.
That's fine, because if you know that going into the game, and then see the personality and read it, and then at the same time say, listen, sir, he wasn't going to roll down his window all the way. I said, listen, I'm not going to give you a ticket. Before he even said, I'm not going to give you a ticket. I just want to, is everything okay? You drank tonight? No, I haven't drank. And he's talking through the crack of the window. I says, I just want you to turn your lights on. He turns them on and says,
Oh my gosh.
rolls down his window. He says, man, I'm sorry, man. I says, no problem. I said, I want you to get home safe. There's a lot of people walking out there from the restaurants and bars. I says, I don't want you to get hurt, them to get hurt. And it de-escalated. You could feel the air. You could feel the air. Hey, listen, and you could, I could give you so many examples, and it happens. And that's where I said the goodness comes out, because you actually see the goodness in the person. Then you realize that they either had a bad experience at some time, or they might not have had a bad experience, but just through peer, their social circle, this is the on guard, the readiness that they're prepared for.
Right.
So let's take the air out and just say, hey man, I'm not going to give you a ticket. Just relax. Here's and then just, how's your night going? Make crack a couple of jokes.
That's right.
And that's
Now, I want to ask Representative Rosario something. Where do you fit into all this? Now, you have a title in that you were telling me that you're
The civilian administration.
Now, how does this dovetail with being a legislator, and what do you do?
Well, pretty much what I do with the PD is I work with the non-sworn. So I do assist with a lot of their projects, but I mainly work with the non-sworn records department, dispatch, payroll, things of that nature. So that's my day-to-day. But however, we're doing a police accreditation project, so we're trying to get accredited through the state of Connecticut. And those are a lot of the policies and standards that the chief has really come on ever since he's come on, and I've come on. I know he's really been gung-ho about getting the department accredited. So right now we're on the verge of getting a Tier 1 accreditation. Maybe the chief can...
to explain that, Tier 1 accreditation.
Accreditation is there's state and federal guidelines. Basically put your police department up to standard, up to par. We all think of accreditation, we think of like an accredited college.
Right.
Most people want to send their kids to an accredited school.
Exactly.
Before you send them to a non-accredited school. And, on the basis of having accreditation, you open yourself up for more state and federal grants. But more importantly, beyond that, it's you hold your police department to a higher standard. They're working to the highest performance standard. The building codes is up to standard. Safety measures are in play, and it's recognized by the state. They come in and inspect it 2-3 times a year. We have the mock trial, and then there's they come in and they take the last deliverance and they audit you basically and see if you're up to code and up to standards, and you're recognized as, I don't know how many there are in the state. I think there's not many.
There are about 14 in the state. And just to dovetail on what the chief talked about as far as accreditation, across the nation, you've been hearing about, police departments and, clashes with the community, and Officer Eldridge mentioned some of the de-escalation tactics. Being an accredited department, really, you're setting yourself above the bar. It's a volunteer program. You're setting yourself above the bar. And I know the chief really holds his officers up to a high standard. As you can see, they recently came out with the report, I believe it was the AAAC Commission of traffic stops with minorities. I know Shelton was one of the lowest, if not the lowest, in the state. So that's something to be very proud of.
Go ahead, Father.
Well, it's professional standards, okay? And I know a lot. The reason I know so much about this, every year I teach a class down in New Haven with Dr. Eisenberg. He wrote the book on policing in our century. It's one of the top books. I interviewed police chiefs all over the country, and I go in there and I sit with officers and students that are getting their masters and PhD programs, and we go into it just as things, what's going on in prisons, how I view what they do and stuff like that. And these standards are basically wonderful for all our community and stuff like that. And as Chris just said, right now across the nation, okay, you need to have them doing a proactive work because of the racial problems that we have, the community problems and stuff like that. What the chief, the reason I know what the chief is doing, he's got the highest standard of what they're talking about in police community relations. People think you jump on the bike and you ride around the community and that's it. That's
It's
not
way more than that.
It's way more in depth than that. And he's on, and of course Chris, that's why Chris then can take that stuff to the legislature, because from the inside, you know.
Chris is a big asset in making things move forward. But not just speaking of accreditation, just interpreting accreditation, not only holding your officers accountable, holding them to the higher standard, even your building conditions. So it's stuff that's documented on a daily basis that you're doing. For an example, prisoners. You have the prisoners that's inside and the inmates that come in and are arrested on a daily basis. We always have, no matter what town or city you're in, there's always going to be arrests. You're making sure that the air quality is up for the inmates. Even though they're an inmate, they still have rights. You're making sure that they get their meals and it's documented. You're making sure that medications, you're making sure before and after for officer safety, the cells are checked on a daily basis. And it holds everyone accountable. It limits the liability within the police department and ensures to the public that things are being maintained and done professionally and respectfully, and it's up to standard. And as well as it builds that community policing and trust within your community as well.
Well, the key word I hear here is community, and it brings to mind, and this is probably not in this day and age really doable, but there are many, and I've heard, and I watch TV like everyone else, I've heard other people, they want to try to bring back at least that feeling that you had the same officer in the same, that you knew who the officers were that were patrolling that area, and the community got to kind of know them. Is this along the same lines, or is that antiquated?
There's a lot of that in policing, but you don't always hold that position forever. So I personally, I don't look at it like that. And I know a lot of community policing say, hey, you got the one guy in the neighborhood, he was an officer for 8 years and everyone knows him. Well, that's great. What if that one officer gets promoted? I look at the word of community policing, if you take it out and you never ever say it again, it's just building relationships.
It's the whole picture.
You're building relationships. So whether you're building a relationship with your school resource officer, you're building a relationship with the police department, with the mayor's office, you're building relationships with the board of ed, you're building relationship with local businesses, ensure their safety. Everywhere you go, you're building relationships. And that's what community policing.
So you're looking at, you want all officers to interact with the community in a favorable way, so that it is not drawing a negative. So it doesn't matter which officer is in that given neighborhood, because you're going to get the same. He's a friend. He's not necessarily. He's not an enforcer.
Not an adversary.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what. But you just don't need a few, because those few get promoted, as the chief says. And guess what? You got back again somebody who wants to be, and he's changing a culture. And you're going actually we're going back to the old way it was, when probably I got a boot in the bum for doing something stupid rather than some other things when I was a young kid, and I knew every officer, and they know you, and it was not adversarial. It was never adversarial, and then it became to this tragic.
And when I hold staff
adversary.
meetings, and when I meet with the department heads,
Right.
I don't just focus on crime prevention in Quad David. I don't focus just on crime prevention. I focus on all. So if I'm meeting with the training academy, I focus on the training academy, and all that ties in building relationships. What are you doing in the training academy? Are we up for higher performance? Are we up
Right.
on the new teaching and instruction? Are we sending them to the best academies? Are we getting them in there fast enough? Are we taking them out without ensuring that everything's done accurately and efficiently? As well as when I meet with the traffic unit, because everyone's interacting daily with the community. The traffic units, we talk about how your funeral details, and we talk about the new developments getting brought in, and if there's a stop sign, have you done your traffic assessments and everything else that goes in? I meet with the detective bureau. I meet with all the departments. All of them are equally to me because they all ensure the public safety, and they all interact with them on a daily basis. That's why I say community policing is broad. It's throughout everything.
Yeah.
Building relationships consistent.
You got to remember, the city of Shelton, even though the actual population is about, what, 45,000, but during the day, we have a lot of commerce. We have a lot of industry
Oh,
there.
yeah,
And you have over 120,000
People
people there during the day. So it's important that when the chief mentions community policing, you're dealing with every segment of the community.
For
The business community, the education community, your local veteran organization. So I think it's really important.
In the
that
mayor's
that-
office, Mayor Mark Loretti, for the last 25 years, he's worked on building the city of Shelton, and he's focused on it. And and if you know Mayor Mark Loretti, he's 100% on it. He's
Yeah.
100% on it,
Right.
and he holds himself accountable as well as the police department, and on a daily basis. And he's a big community policing person, and he's big on the community setting and building the quality of life within the city of Shelton. And so that's our focus. We piggyback off that and we run with it.
Well, and I think that is the responsibility of any elected official or civic leader. Safety is first. The well-being of the citizens and the safety of the citizens is paramount. After that, the next things come along. I want to ask you, Sergeant. Now, you're actually out there? You're not a desk person.
No,
you're
I'm on patrol.
You're on patrol.
Yep.
And what's that like a little bit in Shelton? But I mean, without putting you on the.
No, you won't put me on the spot.
No.
I'll be quite honest with you. I served in the Marine Corps for 5 years, and when I grew up, I thought it was my public in my household. That was where we were geared towards. So when I did get out, it was such a easy transition into law enforcement because I loved Shelton. I
Right.
loved the community. I loved the area, and on patrol, I can't be, after 28 years, I am so honored and privileged, and looking back, now I'm towards the end of the career, but I'm so honored and just privileged to work for the citizens, because I ultimately, I answer to the chief, but I work for the citizens. And when you put that in perspective and you realize that these are the people that I have to answer to, these are their well-being. You have to remember, even the President of the United States doesn't have the authority to just put handcuffs and restraints on somebody.
else.
Such
Yeah.
great power. When you talk about this bond and how this wall was created, this is just this immense power that you're giving to some people. Are 21 is the age you have to be a law enforcement officer in Connecticut. But you're given this great responsibility and trust.
And it can't go to
and
your
trust.
head. You
And
have
it
to,
can't.
It can't.
And
That's
it
right.
can't, because it's so great and it's so
great.
powerful. And so keeping that. So 28 years later, and I reflecting, I'm saying, these are the people I serve. And so doing that extra outreach, that extra stop, talk, and finding out who you're working for, and seeing what their daily problems might be is just pays off.
And you
Pays off.
have to have patience.
Absolutely.
And you have to know your own self. And what I'm gleaning from what you're saying to me is you truly enjoy your work.
Oh my God!
I can see it coming from your eyes.
I am so blessed. I work midnight shift, so it's a different element. It's different from what day officers encounter. Just as for the dynamics of the job itself. But as far as talking to people, it's the same. Doesn't stop me from saying, hey, Dominic, Father, my Kathy, and having this dialogue. And when we talked about the good in the world, let me tell you, from day shift to, I just seen it so much, and it'd be great if they were able to, if good news sold, I'll tell you, it would alleviate a lot of the problems. But we're heading there. We're heading in the right direction. We're moving in the right direction.
So
There's no doubt.
I'm getting a positive feeling from you that as much as we're in the midst of all the bombarding we're getting from television, from everything like that, that that it is a better world out there than what we're seeing. And the question somebody might ask, Father, is what's going wrong?
Well,
if anything.
because you're getting bombarded with all this stuff. We're in a high-tech society. All these things have gone on before.
A medicated society, too.
A
Medicated society. We're getting bombarded by high-tech instantly. An accident. One police officer does something wrong in Louisiana. It's all over the news, and every police officer is blaming on the country and everything else. He in Shelton, these guys in Shelton are getting blamed for somebody shooting somebody in Texas or something like that instantly.
And then we don't even have the whole
then we
story
don't know.
yet.
And then
All
you
we
don't
have
know.
is just
Right,
a soundbite,
right.
and we're off and running.
It's terrible.
If I could just add,
Yeah.
the picture that's being painted out there, obviously, listen, there's a lot of bad that happens out in the
lots
world.
of bad.
But you got to give kudos to Officer Eldridge and the chief,
Right.
because this isn't their first rodeo. They're taking the show on the road.
Exactly.
They want to
Right.
be part of the solution.
Exactly.
And I see it here, and I'm so happy it's my show here that we're doing.
I got okay.
Go ahead.
Everybody knows. Well, most all, even your audience knows. I
Well,
got
go
a
ahead.
background. Okay.
Does he have a
I did
background?
8 years as a custodian in the police department of Arizona. I retired from that now. Okay.
I learn something new about him every day.
And of course, when you become something like that, okay, I was a foreman of the night. I had the keys to the city. I could have. It was. But you become part of their. You become part of their group, even though you're a custodian and stuff like that. When you work within that department for so long, you get thought of as you're one of the group because you know everything that's going on.
Sure.
But it was an unbelievable education for me to be behind the scenes because I seen the guys in the locker room. I knew the stress that they got when they come back from having to deal with big cocaine busts or something like that. Then you saw the human beings that nobody else saw. Nobody sees the blue like that unless you're part of like you are. Where
That's
you are,
it. He's been here
Yeah.
6 months. It feels like 6 years. It's a group effort. Whether
It's
you're
a-
a civilian
or
part
not,
of the police
right.
department or not within the city, you all work together on
You
a
all
daily
work
basis,
together.
and you get things done. Everything is a group effort.
Yeah. Well, look what we've got here today. We've got a legislator, we've got officers, a chief of police, we've got Father Russ with a background, and then we have Dominic here. We have Dominic, who was an activist a few days ago.
He's gotta still be.
He's one of those rowdy bunch that gets on the street. Dominic, any thoughts?
On all of this, you know what? I'll say straight out what I see. I see leadership.
Yes.
I see leadership, and I see a culture. And obviously, I've worked in management of large facilities many years, and I certainly know that the tone of the culture gets set from the top with the mayor. And you know what? It brings up the morale within your department to know that you have this accreditation, and it brings people together within that. And certainly, I can see straight out that you guys you're looking for solutions. You're not looking for problems.
Right.
And when you have that mentality that you can bring to that, people bring their ideas, and you have that integration, and you have that community feeling together, not just within your unit, but within the whole city. So I mean, like I said, I know I've spoken to Mayor Laurietti once or twice, but I mean, these are the things that you can pick up looking from the outside and looking at some of the other communities. And the difficult transitions that they're having. Certainly, I know Bridgeport is having a difficult, transition with funding and other things along those lines. it just reminds me how good you can have it if you're having the culture going in the right direction. But it also reminds me how much effort it really does start to get that started. It's almost like you're starting at the top of the hill with the snowball, and you know, once you get rolling in the right direction. But if you got pushing that snowball, you know, up the hill is sometimes difficult until you get to that part.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I
Go ahead.
just want to piggyback on that. And you mentioned it before. It all starts at the top, and it starts with Mayor Loretti. Just the fact that the leadership, and I hate to use this pun, but you know, there could be other chief executive officers and officials that can handcuff you, you know, a chief, and from doing what he really wants to do. And the mayor's really bought into the mayor's to Shawn's vision, and Shawn has bought into the mayor's vision. The mayor Loretti's been doing this for 25 years.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say we have the leadership here. You and I both know politically, and we all know this, that the tone does start from the top, Dominic.
Of course it does.
And everybody's going to watch to see, even a chair of a committee, how the chair is going to present this to the public. And that's how the whole tone goes. And this is a great reflection on, well, this is what I'm going to say, because I'm going to give you a lot of credit. If I were the mayor and you came to me, I would like you immediately, and I would take very seriously your thoughts. And I can see that you connected with Mr. Mayor. We call him Mr. Mayor. You know we call him Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. Okay, Mr. Mayor, I used to be in the Valley Cog, so when he always walked in last, and everybody gave him the greatest respect, I'll tell you that. So Mr. Mayor listened to you, and that's because you set a tone too. And I think it's good. I'm glad you brought that up, really.
It's entirely a group effort. It's great to work for a mayor that embraces your vision, lets you have your own plan. And don't get me wrong, sometimes he'll say, hey, no, I think we should go left and we'll go right, and we talk about it, and we both get on the same page, and we just go off with it, and we run at full speed. And it all ties in. Because let's face it, what he's done, what Mayor Loretti has done with the city, has built it up in 25 years, and these taxes have not been raised. We have the funding. So one of the best things about it, we take advantage of what we have. Everyone knows every goal has to be realistic, and it has to be achievable. And a lot of these police departments and a lot of these cities, they're trying to make do with money that they don't have. So your goal is not realistic, and it's not achievable.
It's not achievable.
And it's nice that if we're all on the same page, the focus on the police department can be met, because we do have funding that's there if necessary.
I want to interject here, because I found, having been involved in Oxford and all, in a small way like that, that it's up to a police department. The morality has to stay high there too. You know, the officers have to all feel like they're a team, that they're all working together, and I think
it's a group effort.
And I can, it's and a mutual respect for one
It's
another.
nice to work for a mayor who brings the best out of you.
Now, I might add that he's going to have I can't resist this, you'll understand. Mr. Mayor is going to have a little competition now, because Oxford is the next town growing very fast.
It's good to have competition.
And actually, we are coming up to the second lowest, second or third to Shelton of our taxes.
Okay.
And we're growing, and we're building up our. By the way, we're adding police to our department. Yes.
Kathy, mad
Yes.
that since you brought that up with Oxford, up and coming. The Valley in general is such a we all know. So we grew, it's a special place.
It is.
It really is. So you could go to Derby. A lot of us still have family in Derby. A lot of us our friends in elementary school are still our friends, which is unique from anywhere else in this country, because you could go anywhere else and everybody seems to move out, and you have different friends as you grow older, and your different relations.
You've
and whatnot.
got it right.
But here in the Valley, whether it's Derby, Seymour, Oxford, Shelton, and Sonia, and I know the other chiefs are all doing on the prevention, going back to the opens, are doing awesome, doing the best job they can on the prevention level. But they were all at that meeting, too, through law enforcement, going out there from a law enforcement standpoint, but they were there for the prevention. How do we stop this here? But when we were at that meeting, though,
the Oxycontin thing,
but it was so refreshing that seeing all the Valley towns represented, and that and I still feel, like I said, it's a great place, and your
I-
viewership there is.
I think the police department has, all in New England, took leadership roles in that beyond anybody else right away. From the chief in Gloucester, Mass. I believe it was Gloucester, Massachusetts, New Hampshire. All you guys, you're of the same club. I mean, really took a hold of that leadership when people said, "Hey, you know, what are we locking them up is one thing, but let's look at these are prevention." And you're right.
It's got to be a 2-3 prong approach.
Right.
Prevention
Yeah,
to stop them from even getting into it, and then apprehension,
Right.
and then treatment.
Right.
And the treatment can't be a 3-day.
We know
cannot
that.
be 3 days. It's got to be long term, and then even after that, because the psychological pull of the opiates is so strong, it will pull you back in 2-3 years later.
Well, that's right, and you know, that was my concern, and I'll say this to Chris, because it's a legislative thing. We have got to find ways that a street person can be helped. You can't just be walking the emergency room sobered up or and sent right back out on the street. I mean, we're supposed to be our party, the party of the least among us, and I can see that there's hopelessness there. A person waiting for a bed, there should be somebody that can get a bed right away, as soon as a judge sees them or whatever. And there has to be, and some people a judge won't see them. Something like that, Chris.
I just personally think I'm a very hands-on legislator. I don't I'm comfortable in the halls of the Capitol, but I'm just as comfortable out in the streets. And I think a lot of our folks up at the Capitol, they stay within those walls of the Capitol. They don't venture out. They're in a cocoon. They're in their own little world up there, and it's easy to do that. I think that I encourage all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to get out of those halls and see what's happening in our communities, because it's not just happening in Bridgeport; it's happening all over our state.
All over, and it's really scary what's happening to our communities, and the problems are huge. They're not easy fixes, and money isn't necessarily the fix, and that's the key to these things. The Chief is talking about doing stuff without money. Okay, I mean, the community fix for OxyContin has to start. It has to be in the street. It has to be mom, dad, and the kids.
That's right. Identifying.
Identifying.
Parents identifying
Exactly.
the counselors, or even a lot of times when they're just starting to develop, before the die is cast.
You're right.
Before it's a hard blown out, before they resorting to stealing, but the parents or somebody on the whether it's a teacher, noticing some of the mood swings, some of the behavioral new friends change. There's so many. I mean, we could talk about this for long. It goes on, but I think it all goes back to that identification, prevention on that first step to stop that cycle. We need to cut that cycle, and I think on the state side, we're doing. From what I heard at that meeting, I was very inspired, very very impressed with everyone that was in that room, from the doctors, from the pharmacists to the counselors that were there, and everybody, the BAs.
I want to give a quick shout out to Representative Teresa Conroy, who's a friend, and she helped put that meeting together with Senator Murphy. So
Very
if you're watching out there,
She will be. I'll make sure she does.
I'm sure you will, Dominic.
No, we've had her on just to talk about this issue specifically.
One of the advantages that we have for risk reduction for the opioid epidemic, and I think it has to be stressed, is that there are no secrets. We can talk about it and disclose everything. And in the police world, that's huge.
Yeah.
We can talk about it. We can say this is what's being offered, this is what's wrong, this is what we need, and everybody can work on it. Versus another topic in the police department, if you're going to try to lower the vandalism rate in a certain area, we can't tell you our strategic plan. All we can say is we're working on it. The public wants to know how you're working on it. But if I tell you how and tell you where cameras are and this and that, that's going to defeat the purpose. They're going to come around and they're going to go around and win. And I think that's one of the things we should focus on.
I think that comes around to the building of the trust.
Right.
If your community trusts your police department, then they don't have to ask certain levels of questions of what's going on. And it's that trust between both parties.
Yeah.
And you have to. You have to say,
it
hey.
is. And the other thing that does come off of this conversation is mental illness. You're dealing with people that the mental
huge.
health situation, as you will realize, we're something's wrong there. We've got people that are not being really taken care of. So that's another issue. But at any rate, and I also, pardon me if I I relate so much to Chris, but let me just say, you are correct. And the reason I'm bringing up the political end, and people get upset because they'll say this isn't political. Well, unfortunately, nothing can get done on the level you're talking about unless you have legislators like Chris that are going to push and of the same mind. And you mentioned something. When you are in the inside of something looking out, and you are protected, and you don't have to interact or see this, you get into your own little world. You all eat breakfast together, you all talk about things together, and you're not used to being with the public or understanding what's going on. And honestly, I'm pretty cynical, Chris. You got to stop thinking about the next election and how you're going to maneuver it. You got to start thinking about what is good for human beings and what you were there for in the first place. Very hard to do. I challenge you because I know been there, done that. But that's
challenge accepted.
Kathy, if I could
Yes.
add to that how you propose that challenge. By what you propose, by doing that, you actually secure your reelection. By going out there and wearing that badge of honor, going out there and putting yourself out there, people will get it. You don't need the advertisement. You don't need it. They'll get it. It will be projected out there.
Well, I'm one politician that does that, and I'm not liked very much sometimes. And I'm been told to have a degree of decorum, and my comment was, I will exercise a degree of decorum when you exercise a degree of caring. And I feel like I'm qualified to go at it, especially when I'm advocating for what's dear to my heart and Russ's and our brain injury survivors, which I might remind everyone, we have many veterans and police officers and the like.
Exactly.
It's become an epidemic, and I just don't want to see our people being put in what I call human puppy mills.
Well, yeah, Kathy, if I could just touch on just the way things are, you know how things operate up at the Capitol.
Yep.
And Dominic will tell you,
Yep.
there are some times where you got to take a stand. And
You have to.
it's not going to be popular. And you're going to say things, you're going to do things. And there are times with the brain injury community where I buck leadership. And I said, I don't
You
like
did.
this.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I held things up for
I know, and
4 hours
then
until
the
we got
governor
what we
sends
wanted.
down a couple of his guys, and you go into the caucus, and he tries to talk you. I know, but you know what? These fellas here, our officers, our chief, our officer, and all, and me, a mother, and all, we depend on you legislators to fight your hearts out. We're going to come up there and we're going to insult, we're going to be activists, we're going to be whatever we have to be to get your attention. You know that. Anything. There's a time to be nice.
I already got his attention.
Yeah, there's a time. I know you did. There's a time to be nice. There's a time to be nice, and there's a time to act up. And any changes we've ever made in this world, you've seen people marching and all. I respect it. But at any rate, so what I'm trying to do by saying this and not having it reflect on me, although politicians, it's show business for ugly people, you know that. Okay, I'm trying to make you know that if it isn't done on his level with the power he has, then you can do all the work you want, but you got to push him. That's it.
I agree.
He can't do it alone, though.
It's a good point.
Okay,
I'll stand with
You know what they say? They say DC is Hollywood for ugly people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Show business for
There you
ugly
go.
people. That's
Okay,
right.
right.
You have to get their attention. You have to have charisma, as you said. What I talk about, yes. And Father, go ahead.
Okay.
Yes. What say you?
What say me?
Yes.
I say we work real hard to fund our police forces. We work real hard with people like Chris, who does work for us and our issues at the legislature, and the many others that have helped us, that we support them.
Yeah.
And we make sure that they get in office so that they will support them.
That's
so
right.
that they will do community policing and the mayor will have the funds and we do all those things. That's what has to happen. It's a group effort. The
It
chief
is
says
a
it.
group effort.
It's a group
It's a
effort.
group effort, okay?
All right, so now I'm seeing,
So now we have
I
1
have
minute
1 minute.
to
And
wrap
so
up.
what we're going to wrap up, and what I'm going to say is, it's been a
bless.
pleasure to have everyone here. I want to go around the table again and thank you, Chris, Representative 128th, right,
Yes.
Bridgeport. You, Officer Eldridge, for being here. Thank you for giving me the honor of sharing this stage with you. Thank you for all you do
Thank
for your community. To your chief, your first name?
Shawn.
Shawn, Chief Shawn, and
Sequeira.
Sequeira, sorry, Chief.
It's okay.
Chief Sequeira, thank you for providing the leadership that your officer needs and that your community needs. Thank you for choosing my show. Thank you for being here from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you. And
Hey, we love you.
And you, my fellow activist and brains, the brains of the outfit.
And
and
got
Dominic.
Yeah, we're all with you. We're with you, Kathy.
Yep.
We're Chris's worst nightmare.
I'll be up there in January. I'll see you guys for public hearings.
All right. So I'm going to say to my engineer back there, my husband, and his assistant, my son Robert Johnson, I'm going to say, this is Kathy Johnson saying goodbye. Have a wonderful evening and a better tomorrow. Thank you.